Welcome to the book club where the size is just right, the books aren't too long, and you never need to host. That's our job. We bring best-selling and award-winning writers of every genre to Twin Cities metro area libraries to share their stories, discuss their work, and answer those burning questions you've always wanted to ask your favorite authors. This is a book club where we don't have to argue about what the author meant. They can tell us. The book club that doesn't require a clean house or wine and cheese. And in this book club, if you haven't read the book, it's all right. Although, we hope you'll be inspired to pick it up next time you're in the library. I'm your host, Slade Kemet, and you can consider the book club rewritten because this is Club Book. Club Book is made possible by Minnesota's Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund, MELSA, and Library Strategies, part of the Friends of the St. Paul Public Library. We would also like to thank our partnering bookseller, Red Balloon Bookshop. This podcast features Mai Corland at St. Paul Public Library, Marion Park. Mai Corland is a Korean-American author, born in Seoul and adopted in New York. She is a Rollins College and University of Miami School of Law alumna. Her debut adult romantasy novel, Five Broken Blades, the first of a trilogy from Red Tower Books, was a USA Today, Indie Bookseller List, Sunday Times, and Instant New York Times bestseller. It was also the May pick for Book of the Month and Amazon, Indigo, and Apple Books Best Book of 2024, a book page honoree, and a Goodreads Choice finalist for Favorite 2024 Fantasy. Her follow-up, Four Ruined Realms, hit shelves in January, with the series finale, Three Shattered Souls, expected later this year. Mai also writes award-winning children's and young adult books under the name Meredith Ireland. She resides in New York with her children, partner, and a county fair goldfish who probably will outlive them all.
Thank you so much for coming. I just wanted to get a feel for the room. I've never done a talk here. I've never been to Minneapolis. You guys have an incredible mall. So how many people here write as well as read? Oh, a lot of you. Great. Fantastic. I think you'll probably enjoy this talk, I hope. So I thought what I love to do is have things be conversational. Normally, we do a lot of Q&A, so anytime you have a question, feel free to ask. What I thought I would do, though, is talk a little bit about myself, about how I became Mai Corland. My name's Meredith Ireland. And then go into a little bit about the process of getting published, and then a bit about the series itself. So I've been a professional author as far as you can say that I've had book deals to my name since 2019. So before that, I did a bunch of other things. I went to college for what I thought at the time was going to be an MBA. I noped out of that, I think, day 2 of college. I became an art history major, as you do for the money. But I loved it. I really loved art history. I really found something that interested me. And then as I was in school, 9/11 happened. And I was like, I wanted to do something more. So I decided to go pre-med and took the MCAT, which I would study for if I were you. I didn't. And then I took a year off after college, and I think like all mildly depressed post-grads, I went to law school, graduated from that, became a lawyer. And then I had kids, and I wanted to stay home, and I wanted to raise them. So I did. I went part-time into law, and then I was staying home with my babies, watching Bubble Guppies, and slowly losing my mind. And this lasted for a bit. But in 2015, my stepfather became ill, and he was diagnosed with lymphoma that then became leukemia, and then he went into palliative care. And it was one of those moments where you kind of start rethinking everything, right? Like, is what I'm doing now what I really want to be doing? Or is there something else that I wanted from life, I guess? So I'd always written as a way to deal with the world and deal with things that happened to me. When I was 13, I would have said I was a novelist. I wrote angsty journals. And then again, I would say in college too, I gave like writing a book a try, but it was never a real pursuit in that I was going to look up how to do it properly, into how to actually get a literary agent, how to actually get a publishing deal. I was just like, well, this book is how I dealt with this particular very interesting college breakup. And I kind of just left it at that, and I would shelve it and move on. But then as he got sick, I was like, we don't have all the time in the world. We don't get every opportunity. And so if you want to pursue something, then you should. So I started writing again, and pursuing it as a real career option. And in the early going, it's the toughest, right? Like, you don't necessarily have something to show for all of this work that you're doing. You don't necessarily have anybody's respect, right, for what you're doing, because you're just sitting there at a desk, and it doesn't, I mean, to this day, I don't think my mother really knows what I do for a living, if we're honest. She just called. And my kids too, because they don't see, like, really, because it's all in your mind, right? Like, yes, they can see your fingers moving, but you're trying to furiously get down what's going on in your brain, what you're seeing or hearing, and nobody else sees and hears it. So it's kind of a strange process, because there's so much work that you put in the beginning, and you don't have much to show for it. So I've said that, you know, as I talk to my stepson, who's pursuing playing football in college, and like, success is hard work, it's talent, it's a little bit of luck, but really it's enduring setbacks. It's still putting in that work when you have nothing to show for it. So this continued for a little bit. I wrote a really bad Hunger Games knockoff, but it was like, that was the time, I think. It was set underwater as a brilliant twist. Then I wrote 4 other not good books. But each one was a learning experience. Each one I took something out of and I made it better. And I also, along the way, met other writing friends who were going through the same thing, who were trying to get an agent, who were trying to get, for those of you who don't know, in general, if you want a traditionally published book, you have to have a literary agent. There are some loopholes, but that's the general route. So in order to get this literary agent, they're kind of gatekeepers, I guess, of this whole publishing world. You have to send a query, which is a terrible cover letter detailing who you are, what your story is about, in an entertaining way amongst thousands of them. And then you usually include part of your manuscript, somewhere between the first 10 pages or the first 50 pages. And if they like what they see, they'll either request another 100 pages or they'll request the full thing. So you have these various levels of success as you're going through this, right? Like, you have that first yes, I'd like to see more pages, which means that your letter is working well. Then you have the yes, I'd like to see the full thing, which means your opening's working really well. And you have a lot of no. You have a lot of no. You have a lot of rejection or a lot of nothing. That's been more of what's been going on lately, because I think in COVID, everybody sat down and wrote a book, and then they've been trying to kind of work on getting it published. So the literary agents wound up inundated, because also at the same time, Big Five consolidated, it got harder to get a yes through the door. So I wound up getting my first agent, I want to say in 2016. I was right about to quit. But I said one more book. Let's try just one more time. And that one time was a yes. And so I was like, oh, awesome. I'm going to be an international best-selling author. No, so it didn't work out that way. We went out on subs. So from when you have a literary agent, the two of you, your literary agent in a good relationship is your champion, They are also your first editor. So they give you notes to make your manuscript better, to help them sell it to the editors. And then your editor is then your first for your publishing house is your first main editor, I guess. So different agents are different into how much they put into this, because they're not getting paid either. So it's that same thing of you're doing all this front-end work, but you don't necessarily have something to show for it in the beginning. So then we went out with the initial book that she signed me with, and then I think one, maybe two more, and they were adult. But at that time, publishing was a different place. It wasn't really interested in hearing about stories with people who looked like me. And I grew up with that, where I didn't see myself reflected on the shelf. I didn't see any Korean adoptees. I didn't see really any Korean people at all, especially not in a fun action-adventure type of setting. So from when I started writing, the goal was to not have other people experience that, to fill the shelves with people who have a similar background to me. And at that time, publishing was like, we're not really into that. So my agent at the time suggested that we move into young adult because they were diversifying their shelves. They were more interested. We Need Books had started to take off, and they were more interested, at least on the surface, of supporting diverse authors. So we finally got my first publishing deal was in 2019. So we had those years of I had an agent, which yay, that was something. And I was mentoring in pitch wars, and I was making friends. And we were exchanging, you have critique partners, which is you exchange pages and you tell the other writer what works, what doesn't, and they do the same for you. And so some of those relationships are really good, some of them are not, and then you just kind of go your own ways, and you hopefully remain friends. But as this is all going on and I'm waiting, you start kind of also feeling like maybe I should maybe this isn't going to work for me. Maybe this is as far as I go. We just can't get through the door right now. So then one of the editors who we had submitted to, who didn't like my book, but she did like my writing style, and she said, why don't you audition for this IP that I'm doing? It's for a book called, at that point it was called Too Many Fish in the Sea. Well, I don't know. It had a terrible name. We changed it to the Jasmine Project later. And I said, okay. And that was actually my first publishing deal. Between when we signed that deal and when the book came out, my imprint was dissolved, my publisher was fired, my editor left, and COVID hit. So a lot of stuff, a little bit, happened. And I said, oh my, So one of my critique partners and really good friends, and she's such a wonderful human being, is Karen McManus. And Karen McManus wrote One of Us is Lying. And we were critique partners on that book. And I was like, oh, it's so easy to hit the New York Times bestsellers list and just stay on there for 172 weeks or whatever she did. No, it's not. It's not that easy. The Jasmine Project came out, and it was a JLG gold standard. It got some awards, but it really didn't sell. That was the bottom line for that. And then I thought, next book, and that was Kelsey, but that had been acquired by that editor who left, which then you wind up with no internal support. It's kind of a weird thing that happens as companies reorg. It just is reality. So I went into middle grade, and as this was all happening, my friend who I'd exchanged pages with, she's like, they're doing this thing at Entangled. They're creating this line called Red Tower. She's like, you should really try out for it. And I said, that sounds great. And my agent said no. So they were like, she's like, are you sure? Because there's going to be this book called Fourth Wing, and they're going to be doing a lot with it. And I'm like, no, we're good. We're good here. Middle grade, don't worry about it. So Fourth Wing takes off. Then this idea came around again she's like, talk to Liz. So Liz is the CEO of Entangled, She's also the publisher of Red Tower. She became then my editor. So I got on a Zoom with her, we talked about ideas, and I talked about this concept of a poison maiden, of a woman who could kill with a kiss, a woman who has ingested so much poison that she's become immune to it. And then, this was a real thing in ancient India, that the nobleman that she was then trying to kill would figure that that goblet that she was drinking out of was safe, or figure that the food that she was eating was safe, but no, she's just immune to it because of continued exposure. So I started with that, and Liz and I got to brainstorming, and it's like, well, what kind of world does this poison maiden live in? Who is so hard to kill? Like, why do you need this type of character? And then out of that came the Broken Blades series. And then that's why I'm standing here today. So the Broken Blades series is, as I said, it's a genre blender, really. It is called action adventure, and I say yes it is. It is called epic fantasy, I say yes it is. Romantasy, sure. Mystery, a bit. On the one hand, I love it because that's what I like to read. So people do different things as far as publishing and as far as what their writing goes, but you will never go wrong with what you like to read, because you have to read it a bunch. And if it's something that you're not really passionate about, I don't think it comes across the same way. So for me, I love things like you don't really know what's going to happen. I like romances that you don't know are going to work out happily ever after. So I like things that kind of keep you guessing. And so out of this became 5 Broken Blades, it is 6 points of view, which is not what I set out to do. I initially said 3, but then as I wrote it, it wasn't fully fleshed out. So I was then like, oh, well, I'll add these 2 more, and then I need this last guy. So 6 points of view later was 5 Broken Blades, and it was nominated for Goodreads choice it was a finalist for Best Fantasy. And in the very same year, the Libby app awards came out, and it was nominated for Best Romantasy. And that is how divided it is as far as like, what is this? And I like that. Like, I like that it's a blend. All right, so Romantasy, this is my rant. Romantasy is supposed to be romance and fantasy. And so you should be able to span this gamut of some side of this is more romance and some side of this is more fantasy, epic fantasy. But lately it's become more of a very certain definition, which is more of the romance is very central, the fantasy world is a little bit secondary, but I'm like, that's not what the actual definition is. The actual definition is a blend that it has some aspects of romance and aspects of fantasy. And I think that you can land anywhere in this, and that's pretty much where the series is going. The great thing about it has been truly Red Tower. Red Tower has completely changed my life. I said, there's no way for me to give them an unbiased Yelp review because I just love working with them and I love working for them. They fully supported and got behind For Ruined Realms, which was an instant New York Times bestseller.
With that, we have reached the part of our podcast where we turn to our Club Book audience for questions and comments for Mai Corland and her work. In this book club, we like to encourage members and authors to connect and engage and help bridge the gap between the page you read and the process it took to write it. Our first question of the night comes from an audience member wondering what authors have inspired Mai Corland throughout her life.
One of the things I always tell writers is when they ask, what should I do to become a better writer? It's always read. The library is free and a phenomenal resource. You can take out a ton of books, and there's very, very few professions where you can do it all for free, right? So I read, I read Jade City, which is Fonda Lee. I loved this expansion of what an epic fantasy can be, because it takes place in kind of a 1950s, 60-ish technology-wise. So there's electricity, there's cars, there's phones, but it is very much this kind of gangster jade saga. I think it's phenomenal. The Black Sun and Trail of Lightning by Rebecca Roanhorse. Rebecca writes from a native perspective, so super unique world building that I never read growing up. Just and phenomenally talented. She's won, I think maybe a Hugo and a Nebula, definitely a Nebula. But Trail of Lightning is dystopian. Speaking of dystopian, the Hunger Games series. The Hunger Games series is, I would argue, one of the most perfect trilogies that I've ever read. Let's see, who else? Like, as a kid, I read, I think I had that kind of formulative experience of reading Stephen King too early. I think everybody has that book that they got their hands on at like 13, and you're like, oh no, now I have a new phobia or whatever. For me, it was Firestarter. I also read Anne Rice too early. But I did, so I read John Grisham, which is hilarious because I became an attorney, but had nothing to do with that. But it was around that time, though, that I started loving reading again. I was raised by a librarian. My dad managed the Brooklyn Public Library. But then after he died, I really kind of fell out of reading, and it was, I think, around when I was 13, 14, and you can start picking your own books, right? It's not just things that are handed to you. You can go and pick up the inappropriate Stephen King that you want. And then, you get to kind of choose what you want from that. And so, yeah, I wound up loving reading again.
This audience member asks if Corland saw many authors who looked like her growing up.
It was a very strange thing. So I grew up in a time, so I was adopted, my mother and my father white. At the time, the most forward thinking was, we're not going to see color. We are going to treat our children as our children, but the only problem with that is everybody else sees you as not. So it creates some weirdness. Because I remember when I said I was going to participate in DV Pit, my mom goes, "What's that?" And I go, "Oh, it's a pitch event for diverse writers, authors of color in particular." And she looks at me and she's like, "You're not a person of color." I'm like, "I think I am. Like, I'm pretty sure like other people have said something about this." But to her, she doesn't really see it. So I kind of grew up estranged from where I was born. It's a little bit weird. And then my feelings on that kind of like migrated into the series. Mikhail is adopted. There will always be an adoptee, surprise or not, I guess, in anything that I write. I think because it defines so much of who I am. So it kind of sneaks its way in to whatever I'm doing. But he's adopted in a way that Yusan, Gaia, Catan, and Wei were all 4 separate realms. And then Yusan colonized Gaia. And then in a bloody showdown, took it over and really absorbed it into Yusan itself. And so during all this, he lost his family, he was found by a soldier and adopted. So I put that in. I did a lot of research because I didn't grow up with a Korean family. I did a lot of research from everything from names to the mythology itself to historical events. The Festival of Blood actually happened that I mentioned. It was Japan marching through Korea trying to get to China, and they killed everything with a heartbeat. The number being specifically 30,000 is the Jeju massacre. So I've always been, the art history major, as lucrative as it was, comes into play because I love history, and I love researching that part of it. But in the very beginning of the series, I do talk about how, like, I don't claim to have any authenticity. Like, I don't claim to be a Korean authority on anything. This is just very specific to me and to my experience. And in that case, like, I think it is authentic, but to me. And then the food was the best part, because I love Korean food. And I was standing in the kitchen, like, eating kimchi out of a jar, and I'm like, well, look at this. It's very Korean. But it's an interesting reconnection. And I don't think something that I would have been capable of before I hit adulthood, because I wouldn't have considered myself either Korean enough, or I wouldn't have had the interest.
This question is what advice Corland would give to aspiring writers.
So the first is always to read in your category and out of it. But definitely, whatever your genre is, you should know or be familiar with at least 3 books published in the last 2 to 3 years in that, because the fields change. Like, what was hot 5 years ago, 10 years ago, isn't now. The expectations for voice have shifted significantly from what they were 5, 10 years ago. Even right now, like, if you had tried to publish new adult 5, 10 years ago, nobody would have published it. But now everybody's scrambling to try to get their newest romantasy, new adult imprint up and running, because they're trying to be Red Tower, honestly, because they have the dominant books, because we're hitting the New York Times bestseller list, and so it's causing more people to take notice. So reading broadly and then narrowly inside of your genre is one. Doing research on if you're at the agent stage, what your agents are looking for will help you a ton. Most of them are on, well, they were RIP Twitter, so they're probably on Blue Sky Social now, Instagram, and they'll talk about on Publishers Marketplace. They'll talk about what they're looking for, and you have a way better shot at getting interest if they are interested in your actual genre. And then the third thing is to view other writers as your colleagues. Like, writing is solitary, but being a writer is not, and it shouldn't be. Like, the people who you're writing with aren't your competition. You never really know who's going to wind up where. Like, even as you start publishing, you don't really know. Like, the whole reason I was invited to join Red Tower was because of a writing buddy who respected what I wrote. Otherwise, I don't wind up there. I wind up exchanging pages with Karen McManus, and I love her. Like, it's just, I've said, because you can feel like in your writing community, in your writing clique, it can feel like people are moving ahead of you. It can feel like you're being left behind. Other people are getting an agent first. Other people are getting their publishing deal first. Other people are hitting the bestsellers list first. But I've said this, and I said this online, like, it's not a horse race. It doesn't work that way. Like, we are all just opossums stuck in garbage cans, and you get out in your own time, and the person who gets out next to you has nothing to do with your individual path, because any author that stands up here in front of you is going to have a totally different way that they went about getting to standing here. And I love that. Like, I love that about the book community, that it's never the same. There's always a different path to even getting when they first got an agent, and there's a different path to when they first became published. And it really provides a way for everybody to kind of fit in.
Our next question is if the 5 Blade series will be a trilogy.
So the third book, 3 Shattered Souls, is going to be out in July, on July 15th, and that will complete the series. Okay, so a couple things. So it does wrap up as a trilogy. There will be a spinoff. The spinoff is coming in 2026. To me, this tale has 2 endings. I have called 3 Shattered Souls the Eastern ending, and I have called the spinoff the Western ending. There is a expectation in romantasy of things ending a certain way. I would say that Three Shattered Souls necessarily does that, but I think it's the best ending for the series. But we're wrapping up some things in a spin-off that happened in the series. That's the most non-spoiler way I can talk about this. And then for future projects, we are right now working on, so I was supposed to be here in something totally different, and I forgot my pants at home. But I forgot my pants at home because I have recently just digested the entirety of the ancient Roman Republic, because my next book, the next series that's coming, is going to be romantasy murder mystery set in an ancient Roman Republic like fantasy. Somebody is killing the senators of this republic, and we are trying to figure out who before anybody else dies. So it's enemies to lovers, it's spicy, it's slow. It is what we are really calling romantasy. We are in an intense debate as to whether there should be 2 books or 3, and I'm like, murder mysteries can only be 2, otherwise everybody starts looking incompetent. You could have a false resolution once, but past that. So what we did do was create a way, so it's like 2 and a buddy, essentially. So maybe 2, maybe 3, I don't know, it depends on whether I win that argument.
This question asker wonders which of the books in the 5 Blade series was Corland's favorite to write.
Oh, okay. So Four Ruined Realms was my favorite book to write. I absolutely loved it. It wrote so easily. It is my favorite child. Really, you're not supposed to have one, but yeah, I do. I was able to take all of the lessons that I think one of my favorite things about being in publishing, being in this industry, is you're constantly learning, you're constantly growing. And so working with Liz was such a phenomenal educational opportunity for me, because I was able to strengthen skills that I didn't have before. But that made writing Four Ruined Realms so much easier because I knew what she was looking for. I knew how to she would tell me, end on a hook, not a bow. And I'm like, what does that mean? And she goes, ending on a hook means you put something toward the end that makes somebody want to turn that page and start that next chapter. Ending on a bow is more like just kind of where you bow, and you need a few of those to give the readers a break. But in a more action epic fantasy, you want mostly hooks to keep people going, okay, one more chapter, one more page, one more page. I need to find out what happens, especially with so many points of view. I need to find out what happens to Mikhail. You didn't tell me. Okay, we're going to keep reading, and it's a pacing thing to go faster. So, and having the short chapters was me, but that's just naturally how I write. I like getting to the point. I don't like wandering. So Four Ruined Realms was the easiest. 5 Broken Blades was my learning experience. 3 Shattered Souls, I was fighting in a parking lot. I was so sick, so I wound up with pneumonia. I didn't know that. I just thought I had a weird flu that was not going away. So when I sent it to my agent first, I go, does this make sense? Because there were 14 days there where I was in a fever dream. And she's like, no, it's great. And I'm like, okay, never mind then. This was all planned and it's good. But the whole series, I still to this day don't really know exactly what I'm going to be writing until I'm sitting there writing it. We were toward the end of Four Ruined Realms when I said, I think I know how the series is going to end. So she did give me that freedom. You have to give an overview. You really do. You're making it up, but you have to give an overview of where you think the series is ultimately going to go. But what they require for books 2 and 3 is not all that much, really. It's some vibes and a general, oh, this is what I think we're going to do in this book and what I think we're going to accomplish. But I love the freedom that gives you as you're writing. The best part of writing for me is drafting. Other people like revising more. I think they're... Anyhow, revising is precision work. It is, you need to really focus, you need to be highly caffeinated, you need to be awake. Drafting, you could have music going, you could be drunk, it doesn't really matter. Because you're gonna fix it later. So But I love the magic of telling myself a story. I love the magic of how it comes together. You know, I say that there's always like two squirrels and one brain cell working on anything that I'm writing at that time. And I love that. I love the ability to surprise myself. I love the ability to, because at that first draft, it's just you in the book. It is before Goodreads gets a hold of it. It is before Amazon does. It is just you and this story, and there's something very pure and magical about that.
Another audience member asks if Corland has a favorite character in this series.
I really loved, so the fan favorite is Sora. And Sora is fantastic. She was the one who started off the series because we started with this idea of this poison maiden. But as far as writing goes, writing style, Ari was my favorite to write. I loved having this girl who at first seems silly and trivial, but then you ask yourself, why is that? And it's because she's into things that we right now consider to be silly and trivial, that she's into fashion and she's into makeup and she's complaining that her trunks got lit on fire again. And, you know, she wants good food to eat and she's, you know, she's always hungry. It is things that, but beyond that, you see that she's very clever, that she's stronger than you give her credit for. And one of the things with writing this series, you know, as much as it is an epic fantasy, was to give it a bit of a, I guess, female twist on what had been a rather male-dominated area. So I love her voice because a fun, bubbly, sunshine character who is thrust into a very stabby world is just a really fun concept. So voice-wise, it also brought levity and humor to what can be very dark. I mean, we're talking about colonization, genocide, murder, a lot of it.
This club book member inquires about the inclusion of queer characters in Mai Corland's books.
So that's something that I've gotten a lot of pushback for that I didn't see coming, honestly. For 5 Broken Blades in there, I mentioned very specifically, and some people called it heavy-handed, but I'm like, they're not. It has to be. That sexuality does not matter in this world. Color doesn't matter, sexuality doesn't matter. They're obsessed with class. They're misogynistic. They are, but class is the ruling thing that determines whether or not you are on top or on the bottom or being discriminated against. Because I felt like we get enough of this in the real world. Interestingly, though, because I guess we don't have anything on the cover matter saying that they are that everybody's a little bit gay. We got some like really hateful responses to this. We got a couple that we had to take down on Amazon. And so my agent, her daughter is gay. And so she was not expecting to see this. And she actually got really upset about it. I was like, I kind of expected it, if we're honest, because I know from having Kidlit, right, that once Emma was put on the rainbow list, we were going to get banned. We were going to get more pushback from it. So it was a conscious decision. It was one to continue this, putting characters like me that I didn't see growing up in fiction. But also, I just think it makes a more interesting, well-rounded story of this world that like doesn't care about anything other than what class are you.
Our next question is if Corland had any constraints on what she could and could not include in her books.
Yes. All right, I will be forever bitter about this. It was an argument and I lost it hard because they were right and I was wrong, but I still don't think so. You still don't think so either. All right, so Three Shattered Souls was supposed to end with, this isn't a spoiler, but whatever, we're gonna go with it. It was supposed to end in somebody covered from head to toe in blood. And I loved this image. I thought that this was great. I wouldn't have written it if I didn't think it was great. And they were like, you absolutely cannot do this. And like, they're like, here's what, we had to get on call. They were like, here's why, because it would be more of the same. And I'm like, okay, but hear me out though. I'm like, what if it's not more of the same? Maybe it's deserved. And they're like, no, everybody here hates it. I'm like, oh. So I lost.
Love to see that.
All right. Maybe in like the film adaptation we can get that back in, like with a little like author's note of being like, this was the original intention. And then I had to take out, interesting because we heard a lot about this later on, that there was a more graphic scene with Taeyong and Sora. And I cut it really for pacing. Like it really slowed down because they're about to go try to kill the king literally the next day. And it went on for too long and it really killed out the pacing, but I'm at this point kind of sad that it wasn't in there because we hear all the time, it's not spicy enough. I'm like, it was, it just distracted from the pacing of the book. And then so somebody was like, you should put that scene in like a newsletter, and I'm like, that's OnlyFans, but like, okay, like maybe have subscribed to my literary OnlyFans. But yeah, so those two things had to go. Generally speaking, they make suggestions for the strength of the story. Oh, they also hated my initial ending for 5 Broken Blades. I had to change that 3 times. In order to, there was somebody who died. There was a whole, I liked it. There was a whole thing and they were like, no. They're like, it doesn't wrap up in a satisfying way. They don't ever demand you change anything. They're just like, it doesn't work. So then you go back to your desk and you cry and then you try again and usually you see that they were right. Like I said this before with writing criticism, that when somebody tells you that something's not working, they are almost always correct. If they're paying attention, they're almost always correct. Their solution may not be what works best for your book. Like you will know what solution works best. And so what's awesome is if you are, say, married to a writer and you offer solutions, that writer will then stand there and turn them all down, which is always great for your significant other. But because it helps you solidify which direction you do want to go into. Like hearing something that's wrong makes your brain go, and here's why. Here's why that doesn't work. And you really do get pushed and nudged in the direction that your brain wanted to go in the first place. You just needed to aggravate somebody first before you got there.
Our last question of the night comes from an audience member wondering about Corland's strategy for world building in her books.
So my editor actually had a really, really great observation, which is that think of yourself as like a movie director. And really it's a cinematographer, but you're starting and there's only so much a reader can absorb at first. So you're starting with a very narrow lens, and that's the first book. The first book is you don't need to show them anything outside of this little circle. But then when you hit book 2, you're going with a wider, okay, because you already know this base, now you're gonna go here. And then in the third book, you're gonna go here, and then if you're 5 books, then you go even wider. So I also take the same approach to world building. It's how much do you have to know to be able to place yourself into the streets of Umbria or into the streets of Tamnaki at that moment. Because anything else will feel dense and will slow the pacing down. The process of it is interesting because it's like 49 Google tabs open at any time as I sit there going, how did people write before this? And like, I'm pretty sure people just made it up. But there was nobody else to say that it's not 47 minutes to get from here to there on a horse. It starts with, so because these are kingdoms, because these are worlds, I usually will sit there and draw an incredibly bad map because I'm not a cartographer, but it is much easier if you're writing fantasy at all to actually draw out so you can visually see for yourself where things are and what is possible. And then the art department will ask to look at it and you will panic and go, oh my God, please don't look at this. Like you've got like arrows and whatever. But that did actually become the map of Yusan that's in the first book. I had a river that went nowhere. So I had to fix it. Cartography is not my strong suit. But the world building is, so it can be done subtly in word choices of things that are heavy and sticky and grimy will get across a different kind of world than something that's shiny and shimmering and golden. Rahway is described as a shimmering desert city. Umbria is a little bit dirtier and a little bit, cobblestone streets and frost and it's cold. But even like the subtle word choices will get across your world in a way that you don't have to add paragraphs of wandering through the street. It's a preference and it's a type of, so because this is new adult, so new adult is the border right between YA and adult. All protagonists are going to be between the ages of 18 on the lowest end to 25. So we cut off at 25 because after that you are kind of firmly in adult. There can be like a villain or whatever that's older than 25. But generally speaking, the main characters, the speaking characters are going to be between those ages. Because a lot of stuff happens, right? Like that's an incredibly interesting age where you're starting to have real life ramifications for your choices. You're starting to see the world in a different way in which you grew up. You're starting to see what you can do to change things and then how hard it is to actually change the world. And that's so one of the things I love in the series is, yes, it's brutal, yes, it's dark, it's very murdery, but in the end, there's a lot of hope, which is why I was not allowed to have my character covered in blood. It still would have been better. Thank you so much for coming. This was really wonderful.
That wraps up our St. Paul Public Library event with Mai Corland. Make sure to catch our next podcast with Ann Napolitano. Chart-topping novelist Ann Napolitano is the author behind some of the decade's best contemporary fiction, including today's show, Read with Jenna Book Club favorite, Dear Edward, and recent Oprah's Book Club selection, Hello Beautiful, both of which were instant New York Times bestsellers. Visit us online at clubbook.org for details on past and present seasons, sign up for our e-newsletter, check out our calendar, and so much more. Stay up to date with all of our events at our Club Book Facebook page. If you're on Twitter, find us using the handle ClubBookMN. And if you enjoy these free Club Book events and podcasts, remember to share them with your friends. They just may too. Thanks again to all those who make Club Book possible, including Melsa, Library Strategies, and Minnesota's Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund. Our sponsors include Red Balloon Bookshop, where you can purchase all the books featured in Club Book. Finally, a very special thank you to all the libraries hosting events this season. That's it for Club Book, the coolest club in town. We'll see you at the library.